Hi, folks. It's been a while, but welcome to another episode of Peace, Love, and Understanding with Miss Francine. And I think books like these, just pan over them. They're all about getting along and challenging stereotypes, building bridges to people different than you. And I think books like these are very good for lots of things when you're growing up or when you're helping a younger person who's growing up, like a parent or a teacher or a mentor might. And they're very good in lots of situations, especially, well, not least of which, I should say, when you're talking about religion. Now, why would I be talking about religion, or why would you be talking about religion with your kids? Well, lots of reasons. But for one thing, on the Nanny Franny channel and the Auntie Francie channel, flip around to show my face. Well, on those channels, a lot of times I'll be discussing different holidays, and so inevitably religious holidays come up. I mean, there's Easter, there's Passover, there's the Hindu holiday of Holi, the Muslim holiday of Ramadan, of those, and many more. And I'll keep doing different holidays because it used to be that people would often have story times about Christmas and Easter. Children get very excited about the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, but not everybody celebrates Christmas and Easter. So over time, I think by the time I was in school, in elementary school in the 70s, they started to have a few things about the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Well, I'm Jewish, but I thought, well, I know there are many other religions besides Judaism and Christianity. I was thinking that around the time I was moving from elementary school to middle school, say around 10 or 11 years old. So your kids will be getting to that stage at some point. They will meet, hopefully, all kinds of different people as they get from elementary school to the larger atmosphere of middle school, and then on to high school, college, the world. Of course, not every adult really has a wider atmosphere, and when they don't, there can be a lot of ignorance, a lot of prejudice, a lot of hatred. So I really think books like these are important, and I'm going to come back to these. But it's good to learn about different religions, and you may already have, well, I call it a faith tradition because religion is, and your belief in a higher being, an afterlife, etc., is really such a personal thing. I mean, many times people will say, well, a lot of times people will say, well, you have to go to a place of worship and worship there. Indeed, I hope to join a synagogue. I'm very excited for them to call me back, and we can discuss membership. But meanwhile, you can see there are a lot of different beliefs. There are a lot of different pictures describing different faith traditions. Put this So you may have yours. You may be teaching your children about your faith tradition. You may have raised your children, say, to be Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu. And you have very specific holidays and very specific ways to celebrate those holidays, both joyously and religiously. For instance, if you're a Christian and you celebrate Christmas, you might have Christmas carols. There are some that are just a little less religious, like Deck the Halls. There are some that are a little more religious, like Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And you want your kids to know there's more to Christmas than just getting things from Santa Claus. If you're Jewish, you may have Hanukkah, and you may want your kids to know that there's more than just 8 nights of presents at Hanukkah. So you want your kids to learn about the history, the traditions, but I'm gearing this for people that really are committed to wanting to understand and wanting to live together along with peoples of other traditions. I love So we'll get into some books, and I love how this cover, Who Believes What? Exploring the World's Major Religions, has all these different places of worship. This is a book by Anna Willis and Nora Tom, and I love how it shows different things going on, and on the cover you may or may not be able to tell what religion is being practiced in each of these groups. I know this is a Jewish wedding. Let's see. Let me see if I'm right. Yeah, I know it's a Jewish wedding. One thing that really gives it away is the groom is breaking the glass, and that is because weddings are very joyful, but there is a need to remember some sorrow. There was a time when the Israelites in antiquity had a temple, and then it was destroyed, and they built a second temple, and it was destroyed, and so the breaking of the glass is about that. Up here, I think these are some Buddhist monks meditating, and Buddhism, I think, is a very nice religion. I'm not sure that all the Eastern religions are always called religions, or if it's more of a philosophy, and people here in Europe and the United States maybe just consider it a religion. I'd have to find out more about Buddhism, but they meditate not all the time, but it's a feature of Buddhism, so you don't assume people in Buddhism can go about their lives, but they'll meditate. Maybe Buddhist monks will meditate for a very long time, but other religions, they also have prayers. Let me see. Is there anybody engaged in prayer? I don't know. This looks like the baptism of a baby, which is, if that is what I'm seeing, it's a very important feature in Christianity, baptism. But I know that there are many branches of Christianity, and not all babies get baptized. Some branches of Christianity, and I'm not, breaking them down past the Catholic, Protestant, and Eastern Orthodox traditions, and within that, sometimes people get baptized when they're older. I was reading about that in How to Be a Perfect Stranger. This is a book that I found in the adult section of my library system, and it's subtitled The Essential Religious Etiquette Handbook, edited by Stuart M. Matlins and Arthur Magida. Now, so in this book, I know that as you go through looking up different branches of Christianity, that people will choose to be baptized when they feel mature enough and old enough, usually sometime in their teenage years. So it's this book is kind of interesting. It talks about, there's a section for not only every religion, but every branch of that religion. For instance, I'm paging backwards here, and I've landed between Buddhism, so we learn a little about that, and then Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. So that is only one branch of Christianity. It tells a little about the background, the history, and beliefs, how you can, this is really typical for all different religions and religious branches. Within this book, it tells a little here about how you can become a member of that branch of religious tradition, if you're not born into it. In Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, it says one simply joins the church after simply declaring his or her faith in Jesus and being baptized by immersion. So there's that baptism again. It, as I said, talks about, it begins with the history of how this branch of Christianity formed, and it sounds like, well, the union of all Christians. It doesn't specifically say it's Protestant or Catholic or Eastern Orthodox or anything like that. It talks about the highly ecumenical Christian church, somewhat confusing name because I know that there's other branches of Christianity, was among the founders of the National Council of Churches and the World Council of Churches. Its secular-oriented programs focus on such issues as helping the mentally challenged, aiding war victims, bolstering farms, and improving cities and education. And so this is an example of how somebody might choose to be baptized, choose to join the faith. And all the different religions in here, like we'll go back to Buddhism. I'll flip back, and meanwhile you can look at the cover on this book. Flip back, Buddhism is the previous one because these are all alphabetical. And Buddhism will have probably a similar thing. It was founded in the 6th century BCE in northern India by Siddhartha Gautama, who was born as the son of a king in what is now southern Nepal. Okay, well, I'm going to slip down, but it tells the story of how Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha. And he was wandering around a search of peace. He was finding out that there is suffering in the world, something that his parents had tried to protect him from. Now, I'm sure a lot of parents would like to protect their children from the knowledge that there's suffering in the world, but there is suffering in the world. And that gets into, do I want to become a parent? Which gets into other issues that are discussed in religion, pregnancy prevention, how you raise children, how you teach them, how you teach them about things like death and suffering and things like, is there a heaven? But yeah, Buddha's parents definitely wanted to protect him because they were warned by a sage that, Buddha's father was warned by a sage that his son would become either an ascetic or a universal monarch. And so the king confined his son to home. And then at age 29, Siddhartha escaped from his father's palace. So, wow. Then he went out to the world. He found all this suffering. He sat and contemplated and wanting to find peace of mind. And so Buddhism goes on to describe how Buddhism will have, let's look at this and see how a chapter about a religion is constructed. If you're interested in Buddhism, you could read these sections that are within every religion and talk about the basic service when you worship, whether in fact you worship with other people, whether you can worship alone by yourself perhaps. Most religions that I'm familiar with, the Judeo-Christian, Muslim religious traditions, you tend to worship with other people, but you can pray at home in a lot of circumstances. And then it talks about, this is how to be a perfect stranger. So this is really geared towards not only introducing you to different religions, but if you're actually going to attend a service with, say, a friend who's of a religion that you're not familiar with. So it'll talk about appropriate attire, what you wear, the sanctuary, what are some of the main sections of the place of worship. Okay, you got to turn the page here. And then it'll talk about what to expect during the, I don't know, this is Buddhism. When we say the service, if we're talking about the Judeo-Christian, perhaps Muslim tradition, when we say the service, we mean the Sabbath. We have to read this section about Buddhism to see if they have a particular Sabbath, or if they have some other thing that they mark regularly in the temple. Maybe it's in the Buddhist temple. Maybe it's a daily prayer. Maybe it's less than weekly. Guest behavior during the service, guidelines and advice after the service. Is there any kind of social interaction? Dogma and ideology. That's kind of a harsh term, I think, but I think you'll see that term in everybody's religion if you look through this. So we'll just use Buddhism because it's first in the alphabet and it's something we might not be familiar with. So there are books about each religion. So for Buddhism, there's the Four Noble Truths, originally enunciated by the Buddha, containing the essence of the Buddhist teachings and practice. And then it talks about, okay, well, I can see that's the only, I think that's the only, this is not readings. This is not specific about books. This is about what Buddhists believe. So it's about beliefs. Then there'll be a section where they'll talk about, okay, let's see. I'll focus it on that as I turn the page. A basic book with which a guest can continue to learn more about Buddhism, how the swans came to the lake by Rick Fields. So if you look at How to Be a Perfect Stranger, different religious traditions will suggest different readings, different books that introduce you, and then you can make it your goal to find out more, to do your own reading. Let's see. I thought, there is. Each faith tradition should have, for more information, contact, and then it tells about some of the religious organizations. And how to get in touch with them if you'd like to just, I don't think necessarily you have to convert, or just if you want to find out more information, you can just go on their website or write to them. But then life cycle events, each section, holy days and festivals, life cycle events. So each different religious tradition has talks about a birth ceremony, not applicable to Buddhists, but we discussed Christians sometimes, often I think, will baptize babies, or sometimes it will be more of an initiation ceremony. An adult or an adolescent will choose to get baptized. In Buddhism, there's an initiation ceremony. In certain Japanese Buddhist sects, SECTS, there is a lay initiation into the faith known as Jukai. It also is a naming ceremony. It can occur at any age and is the same for males and females. Usually a brief ceremony, usually part of a larger congregational gathering. It tells about appropriate attire and etiquette if you attend such a ceremony, before the ceremony, during the ceremony, after the ceremony. So each religion will have something like this. Marriage ceremonies are different. They're another life cycle event: birth ceremony, initiation ceremony, marriage ceremony, and of course, death is a part of life. Hopefully, when we grow really old and have had a good life, and then there's funerals and mourning. And talks about etiquette before the ceremony, things like what should a non-Buddhist do upon hearing about the death of a member of that faith. It is usually not considered appropriate to communicate with the bereaved before the funeral. So that's good to know, because you may have a faith tradition where it is appropriate, but just if you make a mistake, I think say that you've made a mistake and that you're sorry for the mistake, but try to find out about such things beforehand, especially if it's a emotional, sorrowful occasion like a funeral and mourning. Okay, and then there's etiquette at the funeral ceremony, a little about what the ceremony would be like. The internment or cremation, whichever might be considered appropriate within the faith tradition. Different religions have different ceremonies about birth, and get into some kids' books about birth and about initiation and about things like that. Like, oh my goodness, I started with A Faith Like Mine. That's a really early one. I know. Well, let's see. Okay, well, we'll get into the what is faith. I mean, this is all stuff that you can read. There's a lot to get into, traditional beliefs, indigenous religions. That's important. But we're gonna. It's really hard to flip to a certain page when you've only got one hand to read these books. I want to see one religion that I know. We'll discuss these pictures. One religion that I know has a initiation ceremony. Let's see. Oh, Judaism. I'm Jewish, so I know that a big part is the bar and bat mitzvah. So that's another initiation ceremony, and that's done at a particular age. It's usually 12 years old for girls, 13 years old for boys. It's when a Jewish young person is called up to read the Torah, the Jewish holy book, for the very first time. And I am now accepted as an adult within Judaism now to be an adult in the secular world and have the adult rights and most of the responsibilities and some of the rights. You have to be 18. And then some other rights, of course, in the secular world you don't get until later, like you're not supposed to be able to drink alcohol before you're 21. Of course, if you are of a certain faith tradition, depending on your faith tradition, you may not drink alcohol at all. For instance, that would be true of Muslims. If you are of a faith tradition like Judaism and also Christianity, you might have, well, let's see, Kiddush is in Judaism, and you say a prayer over the wine to bless the fruits of the earth. Of course, if you're a Christian, you may be familiar with communion, and different Christians have different beliefs about communions, depending on if you're a Catholic or a Protestant or Eastern Orthodox. You may think communion is the actual transforms into the actual blood of Christ, the wine, and the bread actually transforms into the actual body of Christ. If you're of another Christian faith tradition, you may think that these simply symbolize the blood and body of Christ. In Judaism, though, it's obviously not the same as communion. It's just blessing the fruit. Well, I wouldn't say just. I think that most religions that I've heard of have some kind of blessing for food and sustenance. And so this is just showing here in the Jewish picture because I happen to already be here. Let's see. So this whole section is about bat mitzvah, and it's one example of a religion that does a different kind of initiation ceremony for a big ceremony for when a child, we know that at 12 or 13, a child really begins to focus more on adulthood. It's not that they actually are able to drive or vote or some of the things like that, enter into contracts on their own and have them binding, stuff like that. Let's look at another tradition. Holy Maholo. Now, this is a different religion. This is Sikhism. And oh, wow. I wanted to talk about prejudice. I mean, Sikhism has some very good things, and really have to learn more about the whole religion. And it's very hard to flip around and just show you, though. It's not, but you look, so you see some really good, nice, peaceful things. A lot of religions will emphasize peace and will emphasize healing when there are bad times and will be comforting. And Sikhism is actually like that too, if you read about more about Sikhism. So I was a little shocked that the kid who just this is the kid Gurkaram from India. He says he's 12 years old. His favorite hobby is meteorology. I like being a Sikh because my religion discourages discrimination and encourages me to help people, especially needy people. My faith also makes me feel that I'm different, that I stand out. In the past, Sikhs have died for their faith. Every year we have a festival to show how much Sikhs care about defending their religion. And there are some special weapons, and it says the horses and riders are amazing. Well, I don't really like that he finds it so much fun to brandish, to look at the fights, the things like that. But most religions do care about defending their religion. I can tell you, as a Jew, we've been persecuted. The same is true for other religions. There's not only anti-Semitism, there's Islamophobia. Early Christians were persecuted. Whoops, this is back at the Jewish religion and one of the festivals, Passover, which I've talked about over the course of the year. Anyway, so I think that if something in a religion or a tradition or a nationality makes me recoil, read a little more about it. Belonging to a community helps me feel a closeness to God. That's something that I think Sikhs and non-Sikhs would find. But I thought, wow, what is this about Sikhism with the swords? I mean, in this book, each of the kids talks about their religion, and none of the others have pictures like that. I'll show you, for instance, this is Hinduism, and I see weddings. Okay, we're on to, let's stick within, I see different pictures describing how they learn and pray and meditate, and what they learn, and places to pray. Very interesting, beautiful, picturesque pictures. Here's another thing. My goodness. Now, I certainly don't like the swastika, but it was around well before the Nazis made it into a very horrible, hateful symbol, and it was not always a very horrible, hateful symbol. And it is really an ancient symbol, I guess. Well, Hinduism is a very old religion, thousands of years old, so you can learn about what the swastika used to mean before it was used in such a horrible, horrible way that the Nazis used it, not only against millions of Jews, but against anybody that they didn't like. And anyway, so I was a little bit disturbed. Let's see, going on. I didn't see any other sword play in any of the other religions. I made more notes about different religions back in this book, A Faith Like Mine. It has a section for Buddhism as well as for Hinduism, then gets into Judaism, Christianity, and then the where Buddhists live. It shows you a map. It will show one, I think, for each of the different, let's turn it this way. No, I don't see the same kind of violent pictures. I'll let you know once we get past Buddhism and into the next religion, but they each have festivals. This is an interesting one with the elephants. I don't see any kind of violent stuff going on here. So, let's see, there's a few things between Buddhism and Sikhism. I think there was so anyway, I could just tell you, as we went through this book, let's see, this is Christianity. It's practiced throughout different parts of the world, Sunday service. I don't see any violent pictures here. Doesn't mean that other religions, Christianity, here's Islam, Judaism too, have not engaged in violence, because all religions have engaged in violence, sadly, in the name of religion, but religions can also teach a lot about peace and tolerance and working together between faiths, interfaith cooperation. So since I was a little shocked by that picture of all the swordplay in Sikhism, I decided I would get some more books about it. And Your Faith, Sikhism, is another one. Let's see, let's see, getting to the inner front page, okay. Harriet Brundle, okay, he does not have a sword or anything like that. If you read this book and this book, Global Citizens, World Religions, they really discuss the fact that Sikhs actually, it's pronounced, I guess, like the number 6, but it's SIKHS, were persecuted and had their lives threatened. And so if you read through them, the sword play and the sword fighting commemorates a time when Sikhs had to defend themselves. Like I said, this is something that most people of other faith traditions, or if you don't have a faith tradition, suppose you're an agnostic or an atheist, you can probably relate to a time in your faith tradition or belief system when people like you were persecuted very violently. Within Christianity, Catholics and Protestants have been at each other's throats. Within Islam, different beliefs like Sunnis and Shia. These are just two very large religions. Christianity and Islam come to mind, but they're not by any means the only ones. Wow, I need to stop and think, you know what, Christianity, that was another one. That was another religion where I thought, well, I ought to learn more about this religion since I don't myself practice it. And I have my frame of reference. I'm Jewish, but I know that I've been taught about times when Christians, like during the time of, say, the Spanish Inquisition, the Catholic Church was this was before there was Protestantism and the Reformation. The Catholic Church would often persecute Jews and Muslims and force them to either convert to Christianity or die. It's not always, most Christians, I think, are not like that anymore. People grow up, humanity grows up. But if you look at, but I know that there are fundamentalists and people who are intolerant of other religions within every religion. So it's very hard to flip the pages, but I really got to. But I'll tell you, Christianity, this particular book about Christianity from this series, Religions of the World, I think it's nice. Up here, it's got the different the symbols of different major religions. There's Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, and Judaism. And I think it's nice that the series is like that. The series is from the World Almanac Library. This book within the series was written in, 2005. So I try to find some things that are current, but also things that will be thorough and relevant. And I have to look throughout the library system. And it's got some nice parts. It's talking about Christmas traditions. And I think this is Ascension and the Pentecost, which are, Easter is followed by 40 days of rejoicing. So this is apparently a holiday that comes after Easter. And do all Christians even celebrate it? They may all celebrate it. I have to find out. So I was reading more about Christianity, but there were some things in this particular book that I didn't like. It kind of got into discussing the life of Jesus. See, I have a note here. Jesus was put on trial for blasphemy by the Jewish chief priests. And on page 8 here, it talks about Palm Sunday, and this section describes that that's what happened. okay, I don't know, as a Jew, or even as somebody who's not a Jew, but, just doesn't like religious persecution, I know that there's been a lot of persecution about Jews, against Jews. Jews as a whole have been called Christ killers, and that's because of the actions of a few back in Roman times. Of course, it shows pictures like the crucifixions. Even if you are Christian and you want your kids to learn, say that there's more to Christmas and Easter than Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Teaching them hard truths about people being, well, Jesus was, as the historical figure, was crucified because he spoke up and said some things that the establishment, which was Rome, didn't like. And there were some Jews high up in the Roman establishment, but it's not that all Jews, we don't believe in Christ the way a Christian does, that he's the Messiah or the Son of God more than perhaps we're all God's children, but we could believe in his teachings during his life. There's a lot of good art in Christianity, but when you see another prejudice, or something that might lead to prejudice, like this section that talks about the Jews on Good Friday put Jesus on trial by the chief priests. He was accused of blasphemy, preaching against God. They turned him over to Pontius Pilate. Well, it's probably easy to become prejudiced against Jews, so read more about Jews, and maybe get a book about Christianity that talks more about, let's see, Christian Beliefs and Teachings, page 16. It teaches more about some of the things Jesus taught in his life. This really talks about Christian beliefs and teachings, talks about the Gospels. I don't really see a part here about the teachings. Here's a part about the teachings of Jesus. Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of God. It was such unexpected ideas that made his message seem revolutionary to many who heard him, and was one reason why such large crowds came out to listen to him teach. And it was also why some rulers felt threatened by Jesus' teachings. Well, see, I can admire teachings like, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Me, I'm not sure. That's one of the things that Jesus Christ is quoted as saying. Me, I'm not sure if it's the meek, especially, not Christian, but I'm pretty sure it will be the young generations who will inherit the earth. So let's try to keep let's try to keep it clean. Let's try to stop wars and suffering and hatred. And, one way we can do that is being concerned about environmental problems, being concerned about helping poor people through education and opportunity, as well as, of course, food and essentials. Christians have been very good, Jews and Christians have been very good about charity, and I know that the same is true for other religions. But yeah, I think that I might like the part about Jesus' teachings without having to be a Christian. There's a picture that, if you're a Christian, you may be familiar with, but it says, the illustration of the parable of the Good Samaritan by 19th century Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh. My goodness, I didn't realize that Van Gogh really had any famous paintings about religious subjects. Well, a lot of painters of older centuries did, but also some modern ones. And 19th century is relatively modern. I'm talking about post-industrial revolution of the late 18th through mid-20th century. Van Gogh shows the Samaritan helping the victim onto his own horse before taking him to an inn where he paid for the victim to be taken care of. If you read more about it, you can learn what was going on, what was the victim being victimized by, what was happening to this man who looks like he's being lifted onto the horse because he's, is he in a very helpless state? Is he suffering? You have to look more closely at at art to see these things and interpret art, which is a different subject, an interesting one, but a different one. And it's important to read more about teachings of different religions and stories of different religions. Now, stories of different religions. Let's see. There are some things I know Jews and Christians share. For instance, we both have stories like the story about Moses. In fact, the Christians and Jews, and I think Muslims too, but I have to check, believe in the story of, I know that all three religions are the Abrahamic faith. We'll get into the Islam pages within this faith like mine. And you'll be able to see descriptions of these pictures where Muslims live, just as we saw for Buddhists. You see the big pilgrimage to, is this the pilgrimage to Mecca? No, it's the holy city of Karbala, not Mecca. So it's good to read things more carefully. These are only a few of the things it talks about the Muslim holy book. But Muslims, how Muslims worship, what they believe. I think that if you read through this book, you'll find that Muslims, as well as Jews and Christians, believe in the stories about Abraham, through the stories about Moses. Muslims, along with Christians, have teachings about Jesus. They, I know, see Jesus as a prophet, but they don't believe in Jesus the way a Christian does. The 5 pillars of Islam. This section talks about how they pray, how Muslims typically pray. And you can read this and find out Muslims' services. Well, this young person describing Muslim, he's 9 years old, and he lives in Marrakesh. No, he wants to visit the city of Marrakesh, which is a neat city. And, okay, I'm almost positive that this is the pilgrimage to Mecca. But he's talking, that's later on, and this is just showing the structure of this particular book. So every page, every religion in a faith like mine will have descriptions of the basics about the religion. So this Islamic boy is starting out by talking about when the services happen. I go walk to the mosque nearby. I often go there during the week and always go on Friday because it is a holy day. Could Friday be the Muslim Sabbath? You have to read more. It might not say within this book. You can read other books. The 5 pillars are important because they are the things all Muslims must do to show faith and respect to Allah. For me and Allah, who is Allah? Okay, well, it doesn't really describe. It says there is, every day I hear the call to prayer from the, I'm not going to try to pronounce this, Muezzin. I have to learn how to pronounce it. I say the words, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. The first pillar shows my faith in Allah. Okay, and so he's talking about how he prays, and then he'll talk about, let's see, does he talk about the second, third, fourth, fifth pillars? The second pillar, you must pray 5 times a day. The call to prayer always comes from the mosque. There are big speakers on top of the minaret so everyone can hear the call. And before we pray at home or in the mosque, we perform something called WUDU, wash arms, faces, and feet, and then face Mecca to pray. His own sheepskin man at home. Different people have different, they might do different things with their bodies. If you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic, I know there's some kneeling. I'm not sure about other branches of Christianity. He goes into a bending position and then a prostrate position. And then it looks like, let's see, it says he's kneeling. So he is also kneeling, but kneeling is, how much time does he spend kneeling? You turn your head, and then we turn our heads left and then right, wishing the peace of Allah to all people. Well, that sounds pretty nice. So It's important, though, not to think that religions are all just everybody following a crowd and everybody doing something because the crowd is doing it. I mean, there are ceremonies like that, as you can see in this ceremony with the Hajj to Mecca, but then there are different ways of practice in different parts of the world. In Germany, I think this is a young girl, Kulud, I think is her name. On Friday, I always pray at the mosque. There are many people, and the men pray separately from the women. The call to prayer must be really loud so that everyone can hear it. Well, that sounds a lot like what Rakid from Morocco is not. Marrakesh, I think, is the biggest city in Morocco, but he may not be from the big city in Morocco. He may be just from elsewhere in Morocco. And so Rakid from Morocco, Kulud from Germany, they have local and regional practices of Islam. Oh, another person, Turkey, by Simi, looks like a little girl. She doesn't have her head covered like Kulud. That some Muslim girls and women do, and some don't have their heads covered all the time. That's one thing that's different, different among different practitioners of the religion. In Istanbul, where I live, children do not usually go to mosque. They receive their religious guidance from grandparents and parents, parents and grandparents. As we get older, we start to pray more and become closer to God. Remember, I was talking about rituals of initiation in different religions. Maybe there's one for Islam. You could go back to, where is it? How to be a perfect stranger. Find out about that. Okay, I'm going to take a break here, but, I'm about to take a break, but yeah, you'll see it talks about different holidays within the religious tradition. For instance, in Islam, there's Ramadan and Eid al-Fitr, just as we saw that there's Christmas and Easter for Christians. And then we'll, see, this is more about Islam and their practices and their major life cycle events. Okay. Other faiths, there's a little bit about other faiths along with those who practice the major world religions. There are smaller numbers of people across the globe who believe in other faiths. Some of these religions are based on ancient traditions, and others have been introduced fairly recently. These pages will introduce you to some of those other faiths. Let's see, this is Confucianism in Korea. There's North Korea and South Korea. It says, well, imagine that this would be in South Korea. We don't know very much about North Korea. So I'm not sure. I would imagine South Korea. Zoroastrianism is another Eastern faith tradition. You really have to read to see what's going on in the pictures. Shinto. Taoism, wow, this is colorful, but it might be something very serious. It might not be festive. I don't know. We have to read more about Taoism. It's tagline, ways of worship. Personal worship, such as meditating and chanting or praying in front of an altar at home, are important in Taoism. There are also religious services led by priests at temples. A temple may be dedicated to one or more gods. There is usually an altar inside in which worshippers face as they pray. So it tells a little about some of the symbols of some of the, like Shintoism, Taoism, different symbols, as a lot of religions do. Talks about some of the festivals and practices. Oh, I like this about Tai Chi. The man is doing a set of movements to help the power of Tao flow through his body. Tai Chi looks like an exercise, but to Tao's, it is much more than that. It's the power of everything. Tao is the power of everything, and Chi is the flow of energy. Tai is the power of everything, and Chi is the power of energy. When people do Tai Chi, they bring together all their inner strength and energy. Okay, see, Jainism, I think it's pronounced Baha'i. I thought for a moment that this was the Sydney Opera House. It isn't. It is Lotus Temple in Delhi, I think it's pronounced, India. Beautiful grounds with these flowers. And glossary in the back. Okay, I'm going to take a break. I need to get some of these books that I just shared with you back to the library. And then I'll be sharing a few other kids' books in the next segment. A few more kids' books about religion, who believes what, and the kids' book of world religions, along with building bridges to people different than you, challenging stereotypes and prejudices, and can we all get along? I want to just say in closing, I've been on this for 50 minutes and it seems to have picked up. This is, again, a segment for grown-ups and older kids and teens who are interested in larger, difficult to talk about with younger kids kind of subjects. Well, subjects that might be difficult to talk about with younger kids. I did other segments about things like history and food scarcity and the quality of our diets, our daily living, stuff like that. I'm doing this segment on the Peace and Understanding channel with Miss Francine about religion because I really want to live in a world where we all get along, where we don't have wars over, well, religion or politics or anything else, where there's not this prejudice. I'm going to speak more when I come back about, well, this is really a good time to, this was a good chance to talk about evaluating information, looking at different books, not just one. So we'll continue with that. We'll continue with that when to our, I'll try to do a second half. The Kids' Book of World Religions and Who Believes What. And then I'll talk about times when we might want to talk to our young children, not other people's young children unless their parents or caregivers want us involved, but our young children and older children about things like religion, among other things that may be larger, more difficult subjects in the world, and can be the basis for teaching about all kinds of different subjects: birth, death, family, what the secular world is like, etc. So really, a thing like religion really can lead into a lot of things. Okay, I'll be back.